Welcome to our web exclusive. I'm Mike Montecalvo, along with Eyewitness News analyst Lieutenant General Reginald Centracchio. A lot to get to, General. First of all, we'll talk about the topic of the day, or the week, so to speak. And the TSA says airline passengers will not get out of any body imaging screening or pat-downs at local airports. Obviously, next week is the busiest travel time of the year. Generally, let's just talk about the general concerns, privacy and safety. Let's take the privacy section
really
first.
Fine balance. You know, when you talk about privacy, obviously you're talking about one's inability to keep someone from touching you or coming within a clear position to put their hands on you. Security, obviously that's on the other side of the scale. And where do you balance it? You need to balance it because if you're willing to take a risk, that's not necessarily so for the individual who wants to come on to do harm. So you need a system. And the system, unfortunately, has driven us to the point we're at. If the body scan is not enough to do it, then you need to have a pat-down. And the pat-down really is, I think, the thing that's of main concern in today's environment as we talk about people putting their hands on you and going to private parts of our body. Unfortunately, we've been driven to that because we've seen that terrorists are using those private parts of our body to hide munitions and to include within the caverns of the body too. And that's another thing we have yet to be solved. Within the cavities of the body, what do you do with that?
Well, the head of the TSA told the Senate Homeland Security Committee this week that passengers who do not go through a full body scan machine or a pat-down will not be allowed on an airplane. There's one individual who's already being fined $11,000 for that. They're claiming that this is the only way to stop terrorists from blowing up a plane, basically.
Well, at this particular juncture, I think that's the only option we have. You know, if you just allow anybody to get on a plane, you're allowing somebody to take advantage of coming on with anything that can, in fact, do harm to the rest of the passengers. So I don't think we have much to really negotiate with the protocol. If you don't want to go through the screening process, either through the body scan or the pat-down, then you shouldn't be able to fly. This is 2010 that we're talking about, and well after the World Trade Center went down. And we've got to come up with these programs that would make the majority of us flying safe.
Well, a concern, especially for parents, and they've brought this up, is what type of background check has been done on these workers?
I'm under the impression that the workers do have background checks done on them. They go through a psychological screening. Certainly any history for abuse of their positions would certainly be surfaced, and they would not be put in that position. At the same time, we've seen that no matter what systems you have in place, there's always something that will fall through the cracks, and that one individual out of thousands will get obviously the attention that the media places on it. So I hope we don't see that. But you can have all the systems in place. You can have all the background checks. You can have the psychological evaluations, and all that takes place before we allow these operators to get in place to be able to do the pat down. But that one individual who may perhaps have some background that wasn't uncovered, that'll be the individual that gets targeted, where the rest of them are okay.
Well, I believe it's a 10-year look back for their criminal records, but the problem is, and even TSA spokesman said, once they get hired and then they go out and do something, that was not under their control because they've already done a background check on the worker.
Yeah. Well, I at the same time, having been in the business of security checks, I know that it does not end just with a one-time. It ends as a sporadic look at a non-routine basis to look at anything that might come about, such as if an individual is granted a security clearance or he's granted a background clearance check, and then something surfaces, such as a financial hardship, perhaps even a traffic ticket where there was some kind of additional thing beyond the traffic ticket itself, goes up, or alcoholism or drug addiction. All those kinds of things certainly would surface a need to continue looking at the background and perhaps even taking them out of that position and taking away a security clearance at the same time.
Well, General, people on the other side of the issue say they have little trust in the TSA, that workers can save the nude images. They're even saying it could be child pornography. What do you say to that?
You know, that's always possible. Is it possible? Absolutely. Everything's possible. The probability and the hope is that we don't allow those kinds of individuals to be in a position to do that. Now, no one will say, well, you can't absolutely guarantee it. No, you can't. But all you can do is put in place those systems that would be able to identify those that would abuse the system and take personal advantage of it, such as some individuals has a sex offense background. You don't know that, and you hopefully would not put an individual in place. Can it happen? Absolutely, it can happen. The probability is it wouldn't happen, but the possibility is 100%.
You know, I mentioned privacy and safety. The safety concern, General, is the low-level X-ray technology that they're using to generate the images. The TSA saying it is so mild and you're not going through it every day, it's not a problem. But think about the workers who are at the airport that have to go through the screenings every day. That's got to at least pose as a safety concern there.
You're right. You know, years ago I worked at Electric Boat, and you had to wear a badge that would give you a cumulative count of the radiation that you were subjected to. And I think the same would be true with the workers. You're allowed to accumulate so much radiation over a period of time. If you exceed that, obviously you're taken out of that position until your body absorbs the radiation. But radiation is cumulative, meaning that if you get so many rad today, or so many Röntgens now and then tomorrow, it's cumulative. So you can accumulate what would seemingly be, over a period of time, very hazardous to perhaps causing cancer or some other consideration. But there are ways and means that would protect the workers from gaining too much on a cumulative basis of the radiation that they're in contact with. Same thing is applicable within dentist office facilities and such as MRIs, CAT scans, and those kinds of things. They're hopefully taking care of their workers by putting them behind, a screening device, and also monitoring the amount of radiation that they absorb on a day-to-day basis.
Obviously, you should look for delays, because there could be quite a few delays next week as you're traveling. You know, something that we're not even hearing a lot about is trains and buses, because there's really no security checks when you're going, on let's say, a Greyhound bus, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. I did that last week. I went to Vermont, and what I was obviously aware of is there was no security checks whatsoever. They didn't check your bags. They didn't look at you personally. They looked at your ticket, didn't even look at you in the face, didn't ask for an ID. And I did a train a few years ago, too, and the same thing applies there. There are no significant security checks unless there's reason that has surfaced on a credible basis that would lead us to institute the same kind of protocol for trains and buses.
Well, that bus could be going right through the Ted Williams Tunnel in Boston.
Absolutely. I mean, if you have someone that wants to do that kind of damage, you could place certainly a type of munitions on the bus and detonate it well within the tunnel itself. And that's truly the case with even a subway or the Holland Tunnel in New York or any facility that would do a lot of damage to a lot of people in a very short time.
And we'll have much more on traveling right here on our website, WPRI.com. Let's move on to the E-Verify. That's also another hot-button issue. Governor-elect Lincoln Chafee has pledged again to repeal the executive order on illegal immigration. He says he has discussed the issue with the Rhode Island State Police. Do you think, he says this is going to be his first order of business. Do you see him going through with this?
Well, I do. I see him going through with the actual taking away or rescinding the executive order. But I don't know that he is explaining it well enough, understanding there are two distinct parts to this. One is but it's in the same executive order. One has to do with what do police do when they come across someone who perhaps is here illegally. What do? Do they refer it to the immigration's individuals? And the second part is the hiring of individuals into state jobs and municipal jobs. E-Verify is nothing more than determining who you are, whether you're in fact a citizen, whether you're here illegally, or what basis you're coming to the state in, and whether in fact you should be employed by the state itself. And the secondary aspect is what he's talking about with the state police is the protocol the state police use as to dealing with individuals under the E-Verify system. I think what you'll see eventually, he'll come up with a rescission of the whole bill, but he'll come back in with some portion that still maintains what the state police are doing without regard to the employment of that same individual.
Well, the state police want to continue to cooperate with immigration authorities, so that we know. You know, Governor-elect Chafee really can't go back if you really think about it, because that was really one of the key points of him winning the Hispanic vote, earlier this month.
Well, he can't, but I think he's going to find it very hard not to understand that there are two distinct parts of this executive order, and the executive order that he wants to enforce or to stay has much to do with what the state police are doing under the executive order. So I think he's had that dialogue as far as I can see, and I think you will see somewhat of a resurgence or a resurfacing with a new executive order, maintaining those parts that the state police are involved with, and doing away with the e-verify aspects of determining who should be hired for a state job.
All right, a couple of quick notes. President Obama is pushing Senate ratification of the nuclear arms pact with Russia. We've actually been on good terms with Russia now over the last year or so. He is really pushing this. He says he's not going to back down from the nuclear pact.
Well, I don't think anyone disagrees that to reduce the number of nuclear weapons in the world would be a bad thing. But I think we need to do it strategically and make sure that we do not ever put the United States at a disadvantage by having enough in our arsenal to be able to withstand what was known a long time ago, and that was basically a mutual destruction policy, meaning that we'd never ever want to be in a position where we could take a first strike and not be able to respond. And the first strike capability was a term that was used throughout the Cold War. We don't ever want to be put in a position where we could not absorb that first strike and return it and destroy our enemy at the same time. If we diminish our arsenal to a point where we can't do that, then we will become victims of a first strike capability, and I don't ever think we want to see that.
And General, we're finding out that Canada is confirming they're going to leave about 950 soldiers in non-combat situation in training in Afghanistan, and now we're hearing that NATO may keep fighting for that 2014 target date. So the date now, again, a week later. Last week we were talking about 2012. Now we're talking about 2014.
And I think I have nothing to base this on other than obviously a history of what we've seen over the last 10 years. And that is that you'll see 2014 come and go. We'll still be there. Because if you look at what President Karzai is doing right now, he's asking, or he's not asking, he's telling the United States to reduce its raids, to reduce some other considerations. And when you do that, you take away the ability for the Afghan forces to maintain good peace and security. And you're not going to do that if you don't work with them to rout out the Taliban to begin with.
Are you surprised Canada is going to stick around?
Well, I'm surprised, but I think Canada understands, too, that, you know, it's part of the United Nations, and Canada is as susceptible as we are to terrorism, and I hope we don't see that. But I think most nations that are participating in the war on terror understand that they are as liable and as viable to be the recipient of terrorism as we are. So that's why I think you'll continue to see their participation.
And of course, the war has hit close to home this week. Sergeant Michael Perenzino, the 22-year-old from Middletown, was laid to rest this week. Just another reminder of the horrors of combat.
You know, unfortunately, Mike, the only time that it really comes home is when somebody close to you, or somebody in the family, or somebody in our community is directly involved, such as you know, a casualty making the ultimate sacrifice. Otherwise, when we hear someone losing their life from Iowa or perhaps California, you know, we certainly have some concern and emotion for that. But it doesn't hit home because it's not in our backyard. And this one really hit home, as we've seen over the past 20-some who've lost their lives in Rhode Island since the beginning of the war.
And his father says he hopes his son will inspire other people to help others, not just in the state, but across the world. General Centracchio, thank you very much for your thoughts. Thanks for watching.